Have you ever wondered if the Great Pyramid that Herodotus observed over 2,400 years ago is essentially the same one we see today? This question might seem strange at first. After all, history tells us that the pyramid was once completely covered in smooth, polished limestone casing stones, a gleaming monument that dominated the Giza skyline. But what if Herodotus didn't actually see that intact, pristine pyramid? What if his account has been misunderstood for centuries? Today, I want to invite you to join me in reinterpreting Herodotus's description of the Great Pyramid. By examining his narrative, what he saw, what he was told, and how he blended these elements, we'll uncover that the traditional assumption of an intact pyramid might not hold up. Instead, we may find that his words reveal a monument already transitioning to the stepped structure we recognize today. Layers of influence.
The pyramid was built with steps, like a staircase, covered with polished stones fitted with the utmost accuracy.
Herodotus, Histories, Book 2, 124. Herodotus's description of the Great Pyramid is more nuanced than it might first appear. His choice of words is significant. He calls the pyramid stepped, like a staircase, which suggests something critical. What he observed was a structure revealing its layered core. This stepped appearance is only visible when the casing stones are missing, exposing the rougher internal stones that form the pyramid's bulk. If the pyramid had been fully intact and covered in polished limestone casing, Herodotus would not have seen a stepped structure at all. He would have seen smooth, continuous faces running up each side of the pyramid. But that's not what he describes. Instead, he conveys a monument that has layers, steps that rise like a staircase. This is a telling detail. It implies that much of the casing was already stripped away in his time, giving the pyramid a rough, tiered appearance, much like we see today. At the same time, he was influenced by the tradition and oral history of the Egyptians. They described the pyramid in its original glory, with polished casing stones that covered the entire surface, fitted seamlessly to create a gleaming effect in the sun. Herodotus attempts to reconcile this cultural memory of a fully covered, polished pyramid with the stepped structure he observed. The result is a blended narrative, one that acknowledges both the smooth casing and the stepped nature, creating ambiguity around what he truly saw. This tells us that Herodotus's account may not necessarily confirm a fully intact pyramid. Rather, it suggests a structure that was already undergoing the transition to its current form. Inferring from what remained,
The pyramid was made with blocks of stone fitted so closely that it seemed to have been cut in one piece.
Herodotus Histories, Book 2, 125. This passage is often interpreted as a reference to the polished casing stones that once covered the pyramid. However, there's an important ambiguity here. Herodotus does not specifically say he is referring to the casing stones. The rough, exposed core stones are also fitted with remarkable precision, creating the illusion of seamless construction. These inner blocks were set with such accuracy that, even without the polished exterior, they presented an astonishing feat of engineering, and critically, they remain unmoved, untouched by earthquakes or time. This raises a question. Was Herodotus marveling at the remaining casing stones, or was he admiring the tightly fitted core stones now exposed by the loss of the outer layer? If the latter, then his description does not confirm that he saw a fully covered pyramid. It suggests that what he saw were the tightly fitted internal stones, which had already been laid bare. Herodotus's emphasis on the seamlessly fitted stones focuses on the precision of the construction, rather than on the presence of an intact polished surface. It's a crucial distinction because it shifts our understanding of his narrative. It suggests that his admiration was directed at the pyramid's engineering as a whole, not necessarily at a gleaming intact casing layer. This aligns with the idea that the pyramid was already stripped in part of its polished exterior, revealing the intricately aligned inner structure beneath. By blending these elements, his own observations of the stepped structure, the precision of the stones, and the cultural memory of a polished pyramid, Herodotus creates a composite image that reflects both the current state of the pyramid and its remembered past glory. But when closely analyzed, his words point more to an exposed, stepped pyramid with remnants of casing stones than to a fully intact, smooth monument. Cultural memory and narrative construction.
They said that it took 20 years to build the pyramid and that a vast number of men labored on it, constructing great mounds to carry the stone up.
Herodotus Histories, Book 2, 124. This part of Herodotus's account is revealing, not just for what it says about the pyramid itself, but for how he gathered his information. It shows that Herodotus's narrative was significantly shaped by the oral traditions and cultural memory of the local Egyptians.
They relayed stories of the pyramid's construction, speaking of an immense workforce and grand engineering feats, all to build a gleaming structure that once towered over the landscape.
These stories glorified the original appearance of the pyramid, its perfect angles and its smooth, shining casing stones. Herodotus notes how the locals describe the work that went into transporting the stones up the pyramid, emphasizing the splendor of the polished limestone that would have made the monument appear as a solid, continuous surface.
However, these details are firmly rooted in memory, in how the Egyptians remembered and honored the structure as it was at its height.
What we see here is that Herodotus was not just an observer. He was a storyteller weaving together first-hand accounts and cultural traditions. His narrative construction blends the stories of the pyramid's past with the physical evidence he observed.
The result is a narrative that draws from both the cultural reverence for the pyramid's original smooth form and its current, stepped state. This fusion of the past and present creates an account that acknowledges the glory of the casing stones while grappling with the exposed core he actually saw.
Therefore, when reading Herodotus, it is important to remember that his narrative doesn't simply describe what he saw. It's a composite of history, cultural pride, and architectural wonder, intertwining what was physically there with what was remembered.
The intact pyramid assumption. On the pyramid were inscribed the amount of money spent on radishes, onions, and garlic for the workmen.
Herodotus Histories, Book 2, 125. This curious note from Herodotus offers another vital clue. He mentions seeing inscriptions on the pyramid that recorded the provisions given to the laborers who built it. Now think about this. For these inscriptions to be visible, they would need to be carved into exposed stone.
If the casing stones were fully intact, they would have covered such inscriptions entirely. Herodotus's mention of these inscriptions indicates that he saw not a smooth, polished surface, but exposed stones bearing markings, a clear sign that the casing stones had already been at least partially removed by his time.
This detail adds a temporal dimension to his account, suggesting that the pyramid was already undergoing a transition from its original state. It reinforces the idea that the structure was not pristine and fully cased when he visited, but was showing signs of exposure and change, with layers of its core already visible to the eye.
This evidence directly challenges the assumption that the Great Pyramid remained entirely intact for nearly 2 millennia after its construction. Instead, it supports a view of the pyramid as a structure that had been exposed to both natural and human forces over time.
This exposure aligns with a timeline of gradual change and partial ruin, a transition from a fully smooth surface to a stepped structure, not a sudden stripping event centuries later. Observation, imagination, and historical context.
The whole pyramid was built using immense stones, some of which measured 30 feet long.
Herodotus Histories, Book 2, 124. Herodotus's words capture the awe he felt when faced with the sheer scale of the pyramid's construction. His account emphasizes the incredible size and precision of the stones used, marveling at the engineering that brought together these immense stones.
This wonder underlines how he used historical imagination to understand and reconstruct the pyramid's past appearance and significance. His description blends his own observation, a partially exposed, stepped structure, with the cultural pride and memories he encountered.
While he gives some attention to the physical remnants before him, he also fills in the blanks with a narrative of grandeur, honoring the pyramid as a masterpiece of human effort and ingenuity.
The absence of specific current details about a fully polished surface, coupled with his admiration for the scale of the stones, suggests that Herodotus's view of the pyramid is more interpretive than literal.
By merging what he physically saw with what he was told, Herodotus constructs a historical account that bridges past and present, giving us a vision of the pyramid's original glory, without necessarily confirming its condition in his own time.
His writing reflects the interplay of observation, imagination, and context, resulting in a story that preserves the grandeur of the past while grappling with the realities of an evolving present.
So, let's return to our opening question. Is it possible that the pyramid Herodotus described is essentially the same one we see today? All the evidence suggests this could be true. Herodotus's language points to a pyramid that was already stepped, partially stripped of its casing and showing signs of change. His account does not provide a direct confirmation of a fully intact, polished monument, but rather offers a composite story that weaves together the visible and the remembered. By reinterpreting Herodotus's narrative, we uncover a more complex history for the Great Pyramid, one that challenges the traditional belief in its intact preservation until the 14th century. Instead, we see a structure already marked by time, by memory, and by gradual transformation. The pyramid, in Herodotus's words, is a living narrative, shaped not only by stone and engineering, but by how it was perceived, honored, and remembered. In rethinking Herodotus's description, we open the door to a richer understanding of the pyramid's journey through time, its interactions with nature and culture, and its place in the continuum of human history, a story of change, reverence, and mystery, with its stones standing witness to it all. With this new lens, we are better equipped to explore further theories about the pyramid's state, its interaction with natural forces, and the cultural reverence that preserved its memory.